Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of foreign students, primarily from India and China, but elsewhere as well. Foreign students coming to the West, coming to Western universities and colleges and so on to study. And this is, there are gazillions, there's like over 1 million in Australia alone and many millions in the United States. Allegedly 2 million in Britain and so on. So, and this, when you look at other places like France, Germany, and so on. I didn't realize that in Germany, you want to study in Germany, you can actually study any course you want in English. And that was in other countries too, Sweden and Denmark. And so that took me a bit by surprise. I assumed if you were going to Germany to study that you would need to be able to be proficient in German, but that's not so. The argument being the English is the world's business language, that sort of thing. But coming to the issue of students now, I actually don't have a problem with foreign students coming to the West. I'm okay with that. What I do have a problem with is students coming to the West who aren't coming to study at any sort of rigorous level of study. Just to give you an idea, what's this one of Australia's premier universities? Now, 50 years ago, they had 17,000 students in total. They now have 85,000 students in total, and that doesn't include a large portion of people that are doing, say, hybrid remote education, things like that. So the number in total is probably well over 100,000, although the universities seem rather coy about disclosing these numbers. Some of them are just the people that are on student visas, things like that. So the actual hardcore numbers are a little bit harder to. So the numbers have increased by, 6-7-fold in the last 50 years. Now, if we look at, say, the population growth over that time, and we also then look at the lowering of standards, lowering the bar, and the amount of new courses of study that have been introduced, such as Black lesbian dance theory and this sort of thing. Then and we sort of readjust for that. Then the number of the net number of overseas students coming are representing about 42 to 44%, depending on whose numbers you want to look at. And so, okay, well, out of 100,000 students, or every 100 students, 42 are from, again, primarily India and China. So, okay, well, fine. The argument is that these people are taking places, these overseas students are taking places that could have been given to Australian kids, Australian students. Now, okay, I'm not sure I actually buy that argument, but I do see the point they're attempting to make, that there needs to be resources dedicated to these foreign students, and those resources, therefore, by definition, can't be dedicated to local born kids. All right, I follow that. I don't think it's quite as either or binary as some of the people who are making the complaints are really putting forward. But how? Let's suppose it is the case. How do we solve it? Well, universities have become bloated on offshore student fees. Some of these students, the offshore students, are coming from quite wealthy, in India, Brahmin families and Communist Party goon families from China and all this sort of thing. So these are people who can effortlessly pay $100,000 a year tuition fees. But this is not the issue. If we want to restore universities being places of rigorous learning and education that are preparing students, giving them the disciplined framework of learning and knowledge acquisition and knowledge application, then the universities need to put in a lot of work to come back to where they once were 50 years ago, and it's certainly not now. The idea is that bringing these high fee paying, the argument is put forward, bringing all these high fee paying foreign students means that the universities can run because of that income, they can thus provide overall more resources to the local kids, and local kids don't need to pay so much. That falls completely flat when you look at the income of say the university president or dean or head honcho. Has gone through the roof. They're being paid vast amounts of money for doing fuck all. The top 3 or 4 people in university can chew up $5, $6, $7 million a year in salaries and benefits. Well beyond what it ever was, years ago. So the amount of staff, it's become bloated beyond recognition. There's now so many departments working on and off campus of bureaucrats that do nothing and provide nothing, deliver nothing, but some are being paid, fairly decent salaries, and many have become just hotbeds of activism central, where their job isn't to actually do anything for the students other than to make sure that they've got plenty of placards to wave in the street on any issue that the activist university. So it's become a job creation scheme for activists and leftists and so on. So what can we do? If indeed the foreign students are a problem. Well, they are a problem as much as many of the students coming actually aren't students. They're activists and agitators and troublemakers and stirrers that are running around the campuses making speeches about the evil white man, colonialism and oppression and fascists and Nazis and so on. And they're part of an international round robin of students that go from university to university around the world, the Western world, just stirring up trouble and agitating. They're not fucking students. But in order to get all these foreign high fee paying students, the universities just had to lower the bar. If there would typically be an entrance examination, you had to, if you wanted to, to study this or that, you had to do an entrance examination. So you had to have very proficient English. You had to have, you'd be very knowledgeable, to senior high school level, knowledgeable on the subject you wanted to study, and you had to show an overall capacity for learning and academic standards and to be able to withstand rigorous, independent, impartial, merit-based examination and so on. But they did away with all of that for foreign students. So there's zero rigor. If they do any bullshit tests, it's all bullshit. You did really well, Jose, and so in you come and thanks for that $100,000 for your first year. So it's a case of just money. That's all it is. And so the rigor there. Now, how many of those students that are the high fee paying students, the internet, how many of them would make the grade as students in a Western university if they had to meet a high bar of merit based high bar? There are very few. I mean, 10%, 5%. So out of the million students that just in universities alone, I think it's about 800,000. The 800,000 students that are in Australian universities, you'd be lucky if even 50,000. Lucky if even 50,000. That's optimistic. In fact, it wouldn't be anywhere near that. That 50,000 at most would make the grade. That would be it. Your 800,000, nowhere near it. So now, if you break that up over a period of years, you'd be having a foreign student intake of maybe somewhere around 15,000, give or take. Again, they'd have to have proficient English and again to have met a merit-based, rigorous academic standard. Now, the same goes for the explosion in sociology type courses. Again, your Black lesbian dance theory and so on and so forth. There's an explosion in those courses. And I've looked at students, minority students. There was a lesbian lady who my wife knew, and she asked me would I review her thesis. She's doing a master's, by the way. How the fuck she got into masters is beyond me. She's not a total moron, but in terms of is her IQ above 100? No way. Somebody like that would have never have made it into university in the days of merit and rigor. Never would have even come close. She maybe would have just made it into senior high school, but that would have been it in a merit-based situation. So she gave me her her thesis or her draft, the thesis, and asked would I sort of give it the red pen and go through it, and I was aghast. I mean, it's probably one of the most piss poor pieces of work I've ever seen, and this was for a master's, by the way, and it was in something like international relations or some bullshit course like that. Which now, not only were there factual errors, it was shot through with factual errors. That the writing was piss poor, the presentation of ideas and concepts was crap, and suddenly you'd come across a passage, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs that was particularly well written, and you say, well, hey, hold on a minute, where'd that come from? And she would just openly say, no, I just cut it and pasted from this and from that and so on. So, well, it's not your work, you have to, who cares? I've got shoulder shrugs in return. Anyway, I mean, the red pen was, there were multiple red pen marks in every fucking page of this piece of bullshit. And I thought, if that's the standard of work that she does, I can't imagine that she would have got a degree even. And she rounded on me as I was sort of going through it with her. She wasn't happy about it. She expected that I'd maybe have 1 or 2 sort of suggestions, and I would end up telling her how brilliant she was. But she claimed that she'd got like a high distinction on her degree, and it just wouldn't be possible with someone of her intellectual caliber. Just no way. But she's a lesbian, and she got the free pass thing. So again, we come back to this issue of meritorious, rigorous standards. That if standards are applied, again, by merit and rigorous standards, then the amount of people in university will drop sharply. So I would say in a university that currently has 100,000 plus students, that in the real world, the student numbers would drop to maybe 35,000, give or take, somewhere around that. And even that would be, with subjects like English literature and those sorts of things being overswollen, and with or psychology being overswollen with flunkies and so on. But that would be it, and that would be an absolute maximum in the real world. And so once we come back to, so the issue here isn't whether foreign students should or shouldn't come. The issue here is rigor. Very few of these people who are coming in, albeit they pay high fees, but once you take away 65% of the students in a university, then your costs drastically fall. You need far fewer university employees, far fewer administrative staff, far fewer teaching staff. The facilities, the buildings that have been acquired could be sold off. You could trim the costs very substantially and bring it in line with the number of students and the rigor that should be applied to these students. So when they come out with their degrees, they've earned everything in that degree they've been earned. And I've interviewed minorities for jobs, engineering, things like that. And whenever you come across a straight white male, you can see that the guy has earned his degree. He's put the work in, he's hit the books, he understands what he's doing, he's there on merit. The piece of paper he's got in his hand, he has earned by merit. Whereas every time you fucking talk to a minority person, they've been gifted the degree. They wouldn't have made it into university in the first place. Quite a few of them wouldn't even have made it into senior high school. They wouldn't have made it through university. They wouldn't have got the degree. None of it is real. It's all affirmative action in their case. And it shows at the interview. If you interview them with the same rigor that you interview a straight white male, they fall to pieces. They just can't deal with the rigor and the merit. They just can't. And so when we introduce rigor and merit, it's a way of solving many problems all at once, including reducing the number of foreign students. Now, I've got no problem with foreign students coming in. If these are the really bright kids and they want to come and study in Australia or the West, then they've meritoriously proved that they're up to and they speak good English, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a good thing. Hopefully, they'll come away with a positive experience and they'll think well of Australia or America or wherever they're studying. and they'll go back home. Maybe some of them that are exceptional, they maybe do want to stay and become part of the Western life, and that's good too. But they'll only be coming in small numbers. As soon as rigor and merit are applied, the numbers will just fall off a cliff. Be very few that make that grade, and some of those will be naturally very bright kids, and that's a good thing. You want bright kids around, and again, maybe some of them will stay. Now, the next phase of the so-called students coming to study is the ghost colleges. These are not colleges; they're just labour hire companies, labour hire firms, and they're bringing lots of third world peasants to come in. Again, there's no rigor. There's no rigor applied to it. Most of these people don't speak a fucking syllable of English. They couldn't pass a kindergarten test in anything. And they're being brought over, by the hundreds of thousands. And again, it's all bullshit. There's no standards applied. But again, once you apply standards to this and say, okay, independent, merit-based, impartial, you got to do it in front of me. You can't get one of your black or brown buddies to give you a bullshit corrupt test or something. You're going to do it, meritoriously. Then none of them would make it. Tiny proportion. Half of 1% might make it through on that basis. So this solves all, in my view, would solve all the problems and stop this mass arrival of students. But then we need to go on the other side. We need to stop pushing minorities who are in Australia, women, black, lesbians, whatever, that couldn't make it through junior high school to save their lives, and pushing them into university to study lesbian dance theory. That's not helping at all. It's not helping anybody, and it's loading up these low IQ kids with serious college fee debt. How's that helping them, for goodness sakes? It isn't. You've been a Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.